So I need your help with this one because it was both heartbreaking and frustrating to figure out what actually happened to this family, especially the father, Frank. Now, I am definitely not a genealogy or history expert like I know many of you are, so I'll give you all the information I found and what I think happened to them, but it would be amazing if you could, pretty please, leave me a comment about what you think happened to them. Frank Coolidge married Cornelia, who was from Pennsylvania around 1855, and they had a farm in Madison, New York. They had 3 kids, all 1 year apart, Augustus in 1857, George in 58, then Charles in 59. By 1860, they had 4 other people living with them. 1 man was a farm laborer, and 3 women, 1 was a teacher, and 2 others were domestic servants. It wasn't uncommon back then to have boarders living with you to help pay the bills. Soon after this is when everything fell apart for this family. The mom, Cornelia, would die in May of 1861 when she was 29, and a little over a year later, in September of 1862, Charlie died at 2.5. The next year, in December of 1863, Georgie died as well when he was 4.5. Charlie's was the only cause of death I could find, and it was scarlet fever. Frank and his oldest son, Augustus, were all that was left. After Mom Cornelia died, Frank sent the boys each to one of 3 different homes of his friends to be their foster parents, and they never returned home to live with him again. Frank also sold the farm and became a clerk in a store instead. In April of 1863, Frank signs his will when he's 38 years old, leaving his only remaining son, Augustus, in custody of his foster parents, along with any of Frank's remaining possessions to sell to help pay for his education, and $6,000 to be given to Augustus if and when he turns 21. But just 3 months later, he adds on to his will that they are to get him a headstone that matches Cornelia's and to place his body next to hers when he died. In June of that same year, he's drafted into the Civil War, but I can find no other record that he actually went. So here's what I think happened, and this is a total guess, which I hate to do. I think they all got sick, but Frank survived. If it was scarlet fever or another very common disease then called consumption, diseases like that could last for years and often left the person with lifelong physical ailments like arthritis if they lived. The reasons I think he got sick too is because maybe he wasn't able to care for the boys and he had to send them away. Maybe he couldn't keep up with farming and took a less physically demanding job as a store clerk. And maybe he wasn't healthy enough to fight in the Civil War either. The fact that he also signs his will when he's just 38 leads me to believe that he didn't think he was going to last much longer. And that following October in 1864, Frank passes away at age 39 and his oldest son, Augustus, was left as the only surviving member of his family when he's just 7 years old. Augustus went on to become a physician in Washington, D.C., got married in 1904, and they didn't have any kids, but he lived out his days in D.C., becoming the Grand Master for the Freemasons. Augustus died of failing health in an emergency room of a D.C. hospital at age 78 in 1935.